Hello, this is Tiger Slash the Second. The big FAQ2 just dropped and it certainly made some waves, not just because of what it covered, but because of what it didn't cover. Games Workshop sent lead design team members to the Nova Open GT this year and they made some startling observations, not the least of which was the fact that Imperial soup, particularly Knights, consisted of somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of all lists present. This, along with Smash Captains and Guard Command Point batteries, led the design team to make some stark changes. As is typical of Games Workshop, they seem to have overcompensated. After all, why take the time to solve a problem with a scalpel when you can hit it with a sledgehammer? Not only were CP farms reduced to a grand total of 1 command point refunded per battle round, but most useful stratagems got hiked in price. The Blood Angels and Imperial Knights took the brunt of this double whammy, with many of the Knight strats now costing 3 command points. However, Dark Eldar didn't escape unscathed, with Agents of Vect now costing a whopping 4 command points. My thoughts on that later. Fly was modified to take into account vertical distances in every phase other than the movement phase, which means charging over buildings and ignoring the walls is no longer allowed. This rule change was to prevent models from deep striking on top of high walls and then getting easy charges to ground units, or prevent models from charging over screens. In a real screw job though, the same rules change was applied to the Harlequin flip belts, which makes no sense since Harlequin troops are rarely seen in competitive play anyway, and this just pushes them further towards never being run, with the only viable Harlequin build being an Outrider detachment of Harlequin bikes for an otherwise soup army. This is doubly confusing because the only units with flip belts that do not also have the fly keyword, the troops themselves, are infantry, and thus can pass through walls of ruins and such without impediment anyway. Really all this change does is prevent Harlequins on top of terrain from being able to get short charges off, or charging over intervening models, which in my opinion is kind of what the army seemed designed to do in the first place. And for our forgotten Corsair allies, Forge World came through after only 6 months and finally delivered an update to the Corsair's rules that allow them to be used in matched play legally, albeit without any command benefits. Yes, after only half a year we can now use our ridiculously overpriced Corsair's models in the game again. I'm willing to bet the money they saved on shipping costs by opening a distribution center in the United States, combined with the price hikes on virtually their entire line, allowed them to be able to afford to employ the best minds in the business for 6 months to write these updated rules. Look, writing PDFs ain't cheap, people. These guys gotta run a business. I doubt any of us could afford to write 3 whole paragraphs in pink font. Oh, and before I forget, the deep striking on turn 1 has been abolished completely, making Screaming Jet stratagem utterly valueless. Now, if I personally were designing this FAQ, I would have taken a more conservative approach, like reducing the CP batteries to a single source rather than allowing all the command point batteries to be in play at once, much like how Feel No Pains were reduced from stacking benefits to picking just one to use. That, combined with stratagem price hikes for the most egregious instances of abuse, would have been fine, but now we have both higher priced stratagems and reduced command point generation. Games Workshop pays lip service to the notion of reducing soup by reducing the benefits of bringing other factions, but this change not only reinforces soup lists, it also makes them almost mandatory. You cannot bring a solo Knights list anymore and have enough command points to properly run your army with the increased costs. You need a double Imperial Guard battalion just to function. The 33% increase to Agents of Vect is a problem, but not a deeply concerning one, and the clarification that you only need a Blackheart unit on the board to use it certainly helps solve many arguments. To summarize my takeaway from this FAQ, I need to make an illustration. Let's turn back the clock, say to April, right after the Dark Eldar Codex came out. Battalions were worth 3 command points each, and brigades were worth 9. We could run 2 battalions for 3 command points apiece, getting us a total of 9 command points to play with, and up to 3 uses of Agents of Vect, or 12 command points from a brigade, getting us 4 uses. The battalions got boosted then to 5 command points each, brigades got 12 command points each, and our double battalion would see us getting 13 command points total and a use of 4 Vects. And this 15 command point brigade got us 5 uses of Vect. Now Agents of Vect costs 4 command points, so the double battalion once again only gets 3 uses of Agents of Vect, and the brigade once again only gets 4. In terms of game altering play, we are right back to where we were in April, right down to the Talos and Kronos losing fly. They still have it, but with the rules change for all intents and purposes, they might as well not. Now, either Games Workshop is working on some trans-dimensional recursive Google algorithm for their game design, or the rules team has no design bible, no idea what their game should look like, and are just throwing out knee-jerk reactionary changes in response to community uproar and letting the players test them out for them. This shit would have never flown under Rick Priestley or Andy Chambers, goddammit. Those guys had a clear, concise idea of what they wanted the game to be, as is illustrated for us in the design notes they left in their rulebooks. Say what you will about 90s Games Workshop games, but they were not directionless. Bringing this kind of focused game design back would prevent this kind of back and forth nonsense with the rules design and allow for a more polished product. However, meta churning like this tends to sell models, and at the end of the day, Games Workshop would rather be selling models than making a quality game system. There's not really a reason to expect any more than reactionary changes and expansion bundles from them without some kind of monetary incentive. As long as the system is functional, people will play it, or so they believe. This lack of focus and pretending attention to detail with frequent rules updates just smacks of the online gaming communities where the developers will never, ever leave well enough alone, regardless of the quality of the emergent gameplay. It's my hope that Games Workshop takes a step back once all the codexes are released, something they promised us would be done within a year of 8th being released, mind you, ha ha ha, and begins to refine the game without sweeping meta-altering changes that tend to invalidate entire armies along the way. However, so long as there is a financial incentive, I think Games Workshop is going to keep churning the meta, moving the rules back and forth, and just keep taking the piss out of their consumers.